Hello.
Hello! I was like, really, Brian? You're going to do that again?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Reading Reddit with Amber. I'm Amber.
And I'm Brian with less beard.
Indeed.
Brian with 80% less beard.
And yeah, let's read some Reddit. Our first story is, Am I the jerk for picking up glass with a sanitary napkin? I'm a 16-year-old female, and my family was eating dinner last night. Everything was nice and normal until my mom's glass was pulled off the table as she was folding up her placemat, sending shards of glass everywhere.
That's not how the magic trick works. Like, you're supposed to pull everything out without having things smash.
The bigger shards were easy enough to get, just pick them up from the floor, and we could use a dustpan for most of the rest, but there were a bunch of little glass splinters left over. They wouldn't go in the dustpan, and trying to pick them up without the dexterity of non-gloved hands was impossible. Until I got an idea. I went into my room, got a sanitary pad, and used the adhesive side to pick up the splinters. It worked wonderfully, and after going over the spot with a wet paper towel, everything was all cleaned up. Except for my mom's attitude.
Your mom's attitude is gross. It needs to be cleaned up.
She told me it was low-key gross, saying it was akin to me bringing out a condom and using it as a baggie. Now
Is it? I don't know that those are equivalent.
Now I admit I let my temper get the best of me and told her that it wasn't like she had a better idea than getting our hands all messed up. She was ticked, said her usual, "Well, someone's having a bad day today," and stormed off.
Her.
My dad thought it was smart, if weird, to use a pad, but now I'm thinking that, yeah, I might have been gross to bring that out in front of the whole family. I know I'm a bit of a jerk for snapping back at my mom, but I'm just wondering, am I the jerk for using a sanitary napkin to clean up the glass shards in front of my family? Edit, for everyone saying tape, I'm probably going to do that next time. Unfortunately, we don't have anything bigger than Scotch tape at the moment. Info. It was not used. If it was, then I understand how that would be disgusting. But thank you all for the visual of someone taking their used pad out and cleaning glass with it. It's made me laugh more than I care to admit. So, I'm going to say OP is not...
The jerk.
No, not the jerk. And congratulations on coming up with a smart solution to the problem.
It's a terrible solution.
It's a great solution.
Gross solution. Awful.
But OP is not in the wrong here. OP, I think, handled the solution very well.
Well, so, I mean, on a serious note here, what was actually wrong with this? I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can handle little shards of glass. Like, the thing is, like, glass cleanup can only go so far, of course, and I don't think, like, I've heard of people using, like, wet napkins before and stuff like that. So if you take, like, a napkin and you damp it and then you rub it over the floor, you can usually do that. But you want to make sure it has a couple of ply between you and your hand and whatnot. Or just use, like, one of those lint rollers.
Or a lint roller, although they're less adhesive than pads, I feel like.
Oh, they're less adhesive, yeah.
So I would be a little more trusting of pads' adhesiveness to get the glass shards up. So, yeah, I don't think OP was a jerk here by using a pad to clean up the glass. I think that was pretty clever, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
Nothing at all.
There's something wrong with your face.
Our next story is titled, Am I a Jerk for Suggesting My Sister Gets a Smaller Portion of the Inheritance or None at All? I'm a 35-year-old woman, and I've got a younger brother, a 23-year-old named James, and an older sister, 38, named Jess. Our father passed away due to an accident when we were small, and our mom raised us alone. We didn't struggle or anything. My father left a good-sized estate and insurance money. Recently, our mother had a health scare with cancer. It turned out to be benign, but she still wanted to make sure her affairs were in order. About a week ago, she sat us all down to tell us how she divided her estate, our father's estate, and all inheritance. I was a bit outraged to hear Jess was getting more than James and me. Jess isn't married and doesn't have any children. She has a rabbit. I have 4 kids and James has 2. I felt like we needed the money more than Jess. Mom was even giving her the house. Jess doesn't need that big house all to herself and a rabbit. Well, it's not all to herself. She has a rabbit too. I told my mom how I felt and suggested that Jess gets less. James and I have kids, spouses, and more expenses than her. I have twins, and she has a rabbit. I told Mom that she shouldn't even get the house and all that money. Instead, I suggested that Mom put a clause in her will that states if my sister doesn't get married or doesn't have a child within a certain amount of time, she gets nothing.
OP is really showing how great a sister she is.
I felt like that was fair. Jess has a successful small business. She makes jewelry. She doesn't even need an inheritance. My mom told me that I was being disrespectful and it was her business how she divided up everything. She said she left what she felt was fair to me, my sister, and my brother. I screamed at her that she was clearly playing favorites, and if she wants to see her grandkids again, she should reconsider her will. James didn't agree with everything, but he thought that Jess shouldn't get our childhood home. It has more room for a family, not a single woman, and a rabbit. I haven't spoken to my mom or Jess since then. Our family members are saying I need to respect my mom's choice, and my husband said, "Let it go, let it go." Am I the jerk? Edit. First of all, I will not be replying to any chat requests. Get a life. No, I will not be linking a rabbit's Instagram. If you want to see a rabbit, go to Google. For those of you saying that my brother and I have constantly asked my mom for money, that's just not true. My mom provided money for the kids and paid only for our weddings as a gift. We didn't ask for it. Any other exchanges were only emergencies such as medical bills or if we couldn't afford something. Those are the only exchanges. Only if there was an emergency and if you couldn't afford something. She always told us that we didn't have to pay this money back to her. It's her job as a mother to look after her children. Lastly, I spoke with my mother. I said she was free to see the kids, but I'm still not happy with this. She can set up a trust fund for the kids or work them into the will to pay for college. Even suggested the house is put into all of our names instead of just Jess's. If anything, I can just contest the will should the time come. My parents worked very hard to provide us with a good lifestyle, and it's only fair if my children and my nieces and nephew get that experience too. Jess will be fine. I'm sorry if none of you are privileged enough to understand. Well, I'm certainly not privileged enough to understand.
Yeah, I mean...
The indignity in here.
Yeah.
Just the absolute bitterness you feel like radiating off the screen.
Yeah, well, I wonder why. Sometimes you read these stories where the letter writer is so clearly the jerk, and it's like, why did you even write to Reddit if you are so sure you're right? Like, I guess she was looking for validation, and it's like, you're not going to get validation when you're basically like, well, I want all this money for me and my kids. My sister doesn't deserve anything because she just has a rabbit.
My sister can go to double hockey sticks
I mean,
stick it where the sun don't shine.
So OP is 100% a jerk here in this situation.
100% bitter.
She's also 100% bitter. It sounds
and
like...
entitled.
And entitled. It sounds like the mom has paid for other things for OP and her family and her brother's family already, such as their weddings. And if they were... It sounds like they come from a lot of money, so these probably weren't cheap weddings either. Yeah. So the mom may have factored that into her decision making.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that she talks about how, like, oh, my mom never gave us anything. But then she lists off all the stuff that her mom gave her. And it's like, well, then what is it? Did she never help you with anything? Or did she actually pay for all this stuff?
Yeah, so, I mean... It's understandable if you're frustrated when
Oh, yeah.
you don't get what you want. But to go ahead and basically say that your mom should write your sister out of her will if she doesn't get married and have kids, it's so backward.
Yeah, well, and basically being like, well, Jess isn't a real child, isn't one of your real kids and doesn't deserve an inheritance if she doesn't have a family of her own. It's just kind of very short-sighted. It's kind of like, well, you don't know what's going to happen in Jess's future. And whether she chooses to be a parent or not is really her decision and should have nothing to do with how the money is divided up in the will. I mean,
Yeah.
your mom has 3 children, and if she feels that this is a fair division, the OP didn't give enough specifics on, like, how things were divvied up to really give us a clear picture about how unfair or fair this is. My guess is between the medical expenses and the weddings, and if you couldn't afford something, that they, racked up a bit of a tab.
Yeah.
And it could just be that Jess has been very independent and has done a lot for herself and has never received a dime, from her mom. And if that's the case, and she's just been basically, all her life being very independent and not requiring anything from her mom might feel bad about her not having as much of an inheritance,
Yeah, well, and OP and her brother made the choice to have children. And so they shouldn't expect more things just because they have kids. That's a choice they made. They chose a more expensive lifestyle. So, honestly, I think with inheritances, usually the fairest division is just give everyone equal shares. And if some kids have already taken a big share, like they had a fancy wedding or a house down payment, then subtract that from their accounts.
Yeah.
Which sounds, and again, we don't have enough details, but that sounds kind of like what OP's mom is doing here.
Yeah.
I certainly don't agree with allocating based on how many offspring someone has.
Yeah. Well, and also the whole house bit. Like, Jess is getting the house, and her sister, OP here, is very bitter about that and says that Jess doesn't need this huge house because all she has is a rabbit. Well, what does OP think about her mom having this whole big house to herself without any children in the house? I mean, is she like, oh, Mom, you don't deserve this house. I should move in now. You should give it to me right now because we need it more than you do. Not to mention, like, your mom could be alive for another 20 or 30 years, for crying out loud. Like, she's just sitting down and being like, okay, in case something does happen to me, I want to make sure that everything's covered. But fingers crossed, your mom is alive for a good long time here.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully long enough that all your children are grown and out of the house by then. And then you won't need the big house either. I mean, it's practically like she's like, oh, Mom's on the death doorstep right now. She's going to die tomorrow. We're going to push them. Maybe your mom is afraid you're going to push her in front of a bus, and that's why she's not giving you the house.
Yeah, well, she seems to be clamoring for, like, Mom, you just need to give me and my kids everything. We deserve everything.
Yeah. Well, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? That's the old expression. And if she raises enough of a stink, then maybe her mother will acquiesce to some of her demands. I don't know. I think holding the children hostage is like pretty disdainful.
Yeah, it's such a petty and, jerkish thing to do. Oh, I'm going to basically, hold my kids hostage until you use them as a bargaining chip because that's more important than kids having a good relationship with grandma.
Yeah. Grandma, you don't get to see my kids until you give me all your money.
Yeah.
Put the money in the bag. Put the money in the bag right now, Ma.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, like, OP is, like, an incredibly privileged individual, and she's just asking for more and more She doesn't say what she or her husband do, but presumably they have a decent lifestyle as is, but they want everything, and they want to have everything for their kids or not they, because only OP who's arguing this, you know, and just, like, I'm owed this because I had 4 kids.
Yeah.
Our last story is...
Am I a jerk for telling my coworker and friend to stop using overly cute accessories at the office?
Are you reading our last story today?
No, you're reading it. I'm just being mean.
Our last story today is, am I the jerk for telling my coworker and friend to stop using overly cute accessories at the office? I'm a 31-year-old female. and I recommended my friend Joan, who's also a 31-year-old female, for a job opening at my work. Our field is related to offering online security services and such. However, we both work on the training section than doing actual programming. Anyway, Joan started a few months ago and she made a good impression. She's a hard worker and a pleasant person to be around. My boss is quite happy with her. However, I've heard some comments on how she cannot be taken seriously because she's always so cutesy. I started to pay attention and I noticed that she brings her lunch in a Sanrio character bag, that she put a pink floral pattern cover on her work iPad, and that almost all of her work stationery is kawaii themed.
No, say it isn't so! Say it isn't so! Oh no! We can't take her seriously at all! Why would she do this to us? Amber, why?
I've got some news for you.
This is terrible! Oh, so unprofessional. Such bad. Wow.
I wouldn't say she's flashy, but she definitely stands out in a workplace where everyone takes themselves way too seriously and it's mostly male-centered. Yesterday, while talking about the upcoming week, I mentioned to her that maybe she should tone down her cute style, since people were saying she couldn't be taken seriously, and they were already not considering some work opportunities for her because of this impression. Joan was sad at first, but she told me she had the right to use whatever she liked as long as it wasn't offensive or inappropriate. She definitely tones down her cuteness preferences when she goes to offer training to other companies. Then she told me I was so immersed in our toxic work environment that I was not seeing how unfair this was. I know our workplace is not the best, but you have to deal with it.
Yeah, deal with it. Peace.
She said she couldn't understand how guys were allowed to have Funkos in their desks and having the Avengers notepads if...
I mean, this is such an unfair comparison. Those just aren't cutesy.
But if she used Sanrio, everyone lost their mind. Then she told me she was thinking of resigning because she got a better offer in a less toxic work environment. I admit I got upset because I recommended her, and I told her she was going to have the same issues wherever she went in the tech industry. I wonder if I was the jerk. I am just trying to help her, but she wouldn't listen. Update. Okay, I hear you loud and clear. After reading all the comments, I started to remember how I've stopped from expressing myself after hearing snarky remarks from what I call the clique. They are a bunch of guys who have connections in higher places, and they think they own the office. In summary, they are bullies. I guess I reacted this way because I was projecting my own frustrations on Joan. I spoke to her and we are fine now. I apologize and I'm planning to send her some cinnamon roll themed cupcakes to the office. Screw everyone else. By the way, I'm looking for a new job as we speak. I'm tired of this environment.
Well, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think OP's initial reaction was not a very helpful one.
No, well, the thing is, like, if everyone else has, like, their interests and likes in their office and they actually have things that are non-professional, what's the difference between one non-professional type item and another unprofessional type item? Like,
Yeah.
Not all of work has to be, completely, like, professional. Unless that's the kind of environment you work in where basically everyone has to wear a suit and tie all the time and you can't have any professional stuff, non-professional, non-work related stuff at all, then maybe if that was the kind of environment here, that stuff might be inappropriate. But that's clearly not the case here.
Yeah, and about kind of like STEM environments in general, there's almost like this sort of pride in having things that would be considered childish in your workplace. Like, I've had professors who would just like spend half the class talking about Star Wars and other like nerdy things. And, as long as it's sufficiently masculine, it's okay. Like, we'd all play when Pokemon Go first came out, a bunch of people in my program would just go around playing Pokemon Go. But if it's girly, then it's a bad thing and a problem. There's a big problem with that attitude. And, I think that OP's friend is well within her right to keep using things that she likes, and to find new employment if this culture really isn't good for her.
Yeah, well, I mean, the trouble, though, not that I'm saying, like, she should stay if this is making her uncomfortable. The issue is, like, if people leave when these things happen, then it also kind of helps to reinforce that attitude. So it's kind of an non-winning situation.
Yeah, well, it sounds like this workplace in particular, there's a clique that OP talks about who kind of act like they run everything.
Yeah.
And like there are pros and cons to staying and leaving. There's no one good right answer.
Yeah.
But I certainly can understand why she wouldn't want to work in an environment like that.
Well, yeah, and especially if they're going to like hold her back just because she likes pink.
Yeah, it's pretty much what it boils down to.
Oh, if she had a pink adventures, would that be as bad? I don't know. Like, it's just such an unfortunate attitude to have that, oh, well, because she's using these things that are more feminine is not considered, well, she's considered unprofessional, versus these people who seem to be having this exact same kind of toy type things, but they're, considered, more professional just because it's not, pink, I guess.
Yeah. So, and I am glad OP was able to see that she was projecting and see how that was not a very helpful response to her friend, and hopefully going forward they both can find ways to express themselves in their work environments and not worry about jerks being jerks.
May I recommend a giant middle finger?
It's probably not best to do that on work hours or with people you regularly have to interact with.
It is if you're on your way out the door.
Right, if it's your last day.
Amber, this is Brian's bad advice. You're not supposed to be agreeing with me.
Well, I'm saying, like, I do not agree with flipping people off as a general rule. But if it's your last day and you're never gonna see them again because you're moving halfway across the country, I don't necessarily say that's the worst idea.
Amber's like, your bad advice is almost good advice.
Well, it's not good advice. I'm not saying that.
It's the best advice. Amber said that you should flip people off all the time.
No, I definitely did not.
That's what she just said. Flip them off.
Flip them all off.
No, that's definitely not what I said.
Give them the bird.
No. That's not what I said. You look so satisfied with yourself.
I'm very satisfied.
He likes to do this to, like, trap me into things. He does it all the time. He'll, like, spin my words around and be like, oh, Amber's doing this. And it's like, that's not what I said.
We have video proof of what you said.
And what I said was not what you're insinuating.
We'll edit it. Don't worry. We'll edit it.
Oh, no. Brian is the one who does the video editing, so I guess I'm in trouble. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving it a like or letting me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. Bye. Can you pass me my water, please? Thank you.
I am a nice person. I am a good person. I have given Amber her water.